Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Sun Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. It is November 28th, Monday. It is currently about 10:43 p.m., and I just watched a very interesting interview, or at least part of an interview, between Tim Pool and Nick Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos and Kanye West. I think a lot of people are starting to see or hear about this. There's a lot of reporting and a lot of tweets about this. And I was sitting back saying to myself, should I comment on it? Should I give a reaction about this? And I have to go with my gut. The answer is yes, because I spoke about this on the Sunday live stream, and I think I should follow this up. Now, I'm going to get into that in just 1 second, my thoughts on it. But first, I do want to take a second to say, if this is the first time you're seeing our channel, I want to welcome you and thank you for being part of the audience. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary, and of course, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out on all the social media that we can to hear what you have to say about the issues that are affecting us all, from anywhere in the world. Because whether or not your country believes in free speech, whether or not the internet overlords want to allow you to have free speech, we on this channel, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m., we want you to share your thoughts and hear your voice about all the issues that matter to you. And we hope you will join us this Sunday as well. So let's get right into it. What is going on? We know that this weekend, Donald Trump had a dinner, which has been the talk of the town. Donald Trump had a dinner, and at that dinner, there were several individuals. One of them being Kanye West, who has announced that he wanted to run for the 2024 presidential election. Obviously, Donald Trump has also announced that he's running for president, and they were going to meet. Now, we have since learned that, according to Kanye West, who goes by the name of Ye, which I will not be using again in this commentary, Kanye West says that this was something that was he had discussed with Trump. He had a relationship with President Trump. It seemed to be a very cordial, or at least pleasant one. And they had set up a dinner date, which was meant to be in October, pushed off into November. Fair enough. And those gentlemen were going to talk about the presidential race, who's going to be running, some other issues. And we know today that in addition to Kanye West, Fuentes was at the dinner. We know that these individuals are there. Without knowing much more than that, we have seen a lot of people in the news media and all of politics have come out and made their statements. One of those being from the Wall Street Journal board, who say that worse is that Mr. Trump hasn't admitted his mistake in hosting the men or distanced himself from the odious views of Mr. Fuentes. Instead, Mr. Trump portrays himself as an innocent who was taken advantage of by Mr. West. That's kind of what we were talking about on the Sunday live stream. When we were speaking about it on Sunday, we were noting Mr. Trump has no reason to know who Nick Fuentes is. 90% of the public have no idea who Nick Fuentes is, if not more. In fact, even most political junkies don't know who Nick Fuentes is because there's no reason to. He's not anyone of importance. He is a sliver of a radical ideology, one that we disavow on this channel. He is a radical, and we do not believe in his radical politics. Fair enough. Mr. Trump didn't invite Nick Fuentes to a dinner. He didn't invite Milo Yiannopoulos to a dinner. He invited Kanye West. And Kanye West brought people to the dinner for various reasons. But that was on Kanye West. And according to Kanye West, Mr. Trump, being a good host, rather than separating the other guests, allowed them to join in the meal with him and Kanye West. Okay, and Kanye was more than happy to have a conversation, not just with President Trump, but with other individuals. So this really isn't about President Trump, although it's being used against President Trump. That doesn't excuse any of the individuals there. It doesn't excuse him, but there's nothing for President Trump really to apologize for. He had a dinner with his guest. His guest brought other people that he didn't know, and those other people are objectionable. Why should he apologize for people that he doesn't know, that he hasn't dealt with, and that he has nothing to do with? There's nothing to apologize there. Kanye is the one who should be making the apologies. And we should be really focused on what Kanye has to say. He is the central figure of this whole thing. He's the source of where all the confusion and name-calling has come from. Now, we did say on Sunday the following. Now, I'm doing a big lead-in here to talk about Kanye and Trump and what's been going on with Nick Fuentes in just a moment, but I want you to understand the context, because I think that's important. Because right now, the news media has zero context. They don't want context. What they want you to do is to obey, and they have determined Kanye is evil, Trump is evil. You don't need to listen to a single thing. Stop listening. Don't hear any of the ideas. Don't hear any of the context. Just accept they're all evil and stay far, far away. And I think that's unfair. It's not unfair to say that Kanye's entertainer and he's not credible. It's not fair to say that because he's an entertainer, because he's a person, he has a voice, and maybe he has an illegitimate idea. Evaluate him based on what he has to say. Okay. Listen to the idea he's presenting. It's either good or bad. Judge him on that. And that's pretty straightforward. Now, I want to take a moment. On Sunday, we made it very clear. We don't have really any respect in politics for entertainers. They're not the same thing. The same thing could be said about Matthew McConaughey. You could say that about most of Hollywood, whether it's Oprah or anyone else, Kathy Griffin and so on. These are individuals, they spout ideology, but they don't really know politics. They don't know politics, nor are they politicians. But we should hear them, because maybe they have a point of view that's worth hearing about. Sometimes they get it right. We've seen that with Arnold Schwarzenegger. We've seen that with Ronald Reagan. We've seen that to differing degrees with Don Cheadle and some others. So we can't necessarily discount them 100%, though I generally do. The fact is we have to hear what they have to say. Maybe there is a point in there that's worth hearing. Kind of like when Dr. Dre was going out and trying to present his solution for black families and the black culture. And he was in 2019, early 2020, he was reaching out to both President Trump and to Joe Biden and their campaigns to say who will advance the black issues that he wants to address. And he would work with anyone who would advance those goals. And President Trump said, yes, he would, and would incorporate that into his campaign. And Joe Biden said, talk to me after the election, which has gone nowhere. It was Ice Cube. I stand corrected. Ice Cube. So it doesn't mean that Ice Cube's ideas should have been thrown to the wayside. He should be heard, even though he's an entertainer, even though he doesn't know anything about politics. He's not a politician. Doesn't mean he can't be heard. Even Al Franken, as another example, someone who's known as an entertainer, who became a senator, and by most accounts, as good a senator as could be expected for a far-left Democrat. But that means that we have to hear them. We have to see that they are serious about their politics, their political views, they have a political ideology, and they can explain their points of view adequately enough for voters to evaluate them and to elect them, not just because of star power. So we were very clear about that on Sunday, and we believe that's the essence of the First Amendment. People should speak, and they should be heard, and they should be asked questions, especially if they want to run for elected office. And the best answer to even those views that we find to be objectionable is to hear them out and to ask them questions, to confront that ideology that we think is negative. Now, it then turns out, as we heard earlier today, that Tim Pool was going to have Milo Yiannopoulos, he was going to have Nick Fuentes, and Kanye West all in his IRL, his podcast. In fact, we see this picture, which comes from Hassan saying, oh, the supposed centrist Tim Pool is currently hosting Kanye West, the neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes, and the pedo defender Milo Yiannopoulos on his show. I wish I wasn't making this up. And see, there's the problem. We hear from the left, and the problem I have is that they want to shut these individuals down. They want to silence them. They don't want anyone to hear their voices. And I think that's wrong. I think Hassan has got it absolutely wrong. I think the far left has it absolutely wrong. The answer isn't don't let them speak. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. The answer isn't don't let their voices be heard. That's absolutely wrong. It's counterproductive. It doesn't help anyone. No. Far more important is to actually hear them out. In fact, we said this in a tweet that we put out. And it's here. Far too many are missing the point on Tim Pool. The First Amendment is how to confront harsh views. Silencing the voices does not end them, nor does it stop them from spreading. The best cure to anti-Semitism is facing it and questioning it. Same for any other ugly view that you can think of. The answer is we need to address these issues and these concerns and these individuals. We have to face them and we have to confront those views. That's the best way to deal with it, whether it's the KKK or anti-Semitism or anything else, racism, sexism, you name it. It's not to call it a name and say, oh, you're an ist and a phobe. It's not to denounce them or to ostracize them or to kick them off of social media. It's to use the platforms to say, okay, then let's question that ideology. Let's see if it makes any sense. Is there anything behind it besides some kind of feeling? Call them out for what they are, especially if that individual wants to run for an elected office, especially if that individual is someone who has influence over millions of people around the world. Confront them. Ask them to answer the questions. And I say that not just for entertainers, but for anyone in politics, anyone that you may encounter in your life. Confront them and ask them questions. Ask them to explain themselves. Make sure that you aren't just labeling them, but that you actually understand where they're coming from, and that it's not some language barrier or some misunderstanding, but that you truly understand whether or not that person is a bigot or anything, and then confront them on that and show them the light of the way. Because silencing the voice, telling Kanye that he can't speak, telling Milo or Nick Fuentes that they can't speak, doesn't stop them from speaking. It doesn't stop them from being able to reach out to people and to spread their ideology. Same thing with Antifa, and same thing with the Taliban or ISIS or Al-Qaeda. You don't stop them by trying to silence them. They still reach people. They're still dangerous. The answer is you confront them. You show people in the light of day why they are wrong and what is wrong about what they are saying. You confront them. And I think Tim Pool had the right idea to have them on and to bring forward the issues, to ask questions about what happened during the dinner and what are the views of each of those individuals that have been questioned in the media. Because no one's really asked them any questions. And that's important. Now, there's two massively important things that I took away when I listened to Tim Pool. In his interview, mostly with Kanye, we really didn't hear from the others. And the two things I thought were incredibly important. One, Kanye made it very clear, or at least clarified to an extent, part of what happened at the dinner with President Trump. And much like I had presupposed, and as I have been able to confirm through my sources, Nick Fuentes, Milo Yiannopoulos, the only person who was invited to the dinner was actually Kanye. That was through his conversations with President Trump, based on their previous association and the fact that they speak. Okay. And they had arranged to have that dinner. No one else was invited. all the other individuals that came to that dinner were brought by Kanye. That Kanye had contacted Milo Yiannopoulos. In fact, the chain is that Milo was reaching out to Kanye. Kanye spoke with him, decided to work with him. Milo brought in Nick Fuentes to work with Kanye. So those three are connected in that manner. President Trump has nothing to do with any of it. But President Trump is being demonized for that. So now that we have the facts, which are not going to be put on the headlines, that aren't going to be quoted throughout now until 2024's election is counted, we're going to hear that, well, yes, President Trump is a racist because he had a dinner. No. What we know for a fact is President Trump had a dinner with Kanye West, someone he's spoken to before, something that was scheduled for over a month. And that Kanye brought in individuals who have very questionable ideologies, including those ideologies of Kanye West that are somewhat troubling. Now, we don't know exactly what was discussed in that meeting. That's still unknown to the larger public. I have reason to believe that there were various conversations going on and they got heated from what I can gather. And I would say that the conversation went sideways for reasons that have very little to do with politics, that it was an entirely different subject. And that those individuals there, they didn't really speak about politics, to my knowledge, from what I can gather from sources and research. So Trump has nothing to apologize for. Kanye does. And that's who we should be focused on. But Kanye isn't as popular. He isn't running for president in a credible manner. Trump is. So Trump is going to be demonized. But Trump has nothing to apologize for. I disagree with the Wall Street Journal on that. Now, what else do we see that came out of the roughly 17 minutes that Kanye West was on in the interview with Tim Pool? Let's take a look. So Kanye is talking about a great many things. It is not the clearest conversation or clearest monologue that he was having, which is a little different than the way Tim Pool normally does it. He has a conversation which may or may not include things that people are known for. Fair enough. And Kanye is the one who decided that he wanted to talk about his statements on anti-Semitism. Fair enough. So Tim was willing to have that conversation. And I want to pick up this portion of this. This is the very end, just before Kanye leaves. So let's hear what he had to say here.
If we can't, you're not going to take my pain away, right? The Jewish people say it's the Holocaust, this happened, and you can't say anything about it. We can't take their pain away. No one's going to denounce the fact that they tried to lock me up. That's what, because every time I'm just holding stride, and it's like, I thought I was more Malcolm X, but I find out I'm more MLK, because as I'm getting hosed down every day by the press and financially, I'm just standing there. And when I found out that they tried to put me in jail, it was like a dog was biting my arm, and I almost shed a tear, almost, but I still walked in stride through it. Yeah, I think.
Okay, before Tim Pool goes any further, and again, I'm not showing you the whole thing. You can see the whole thing at Timcast IRL and see it for yourself. But I'm watching it and it's somewhat confused. Where is the point? And I wanted to give you enough context to be able to see Kanye is going through several different issues, several different subjects very quickly and without great detail. But he has a very strong viewpoint that is very much against a certain religious a certain religious grouping of people, which I think is unfair, very unfair, and something that Tim Pool had already addressed earlier in this conversation, that he didn't share that view either. And I don't find Kanye to be anything like Martin Luther King, and I don't find him to be anything like Malcolm X. Those are very different men with very different situations, and they truly blazed the ground for everybody today to be where we are in race relations on the positive side, not the negative. But he's made some allegations here, and they're not fair, and they're not realistic. So listen to what Tim has to say.
They've been extremely unfair to you. Who is they, though? We can't say they is, can we?
they have been unfair to you. Well, who's they? The news media? Because they have been unfair to Kanye to some extent. Some of it's because it's well-deserved, and some of it is undeserved. And some people, like on Twitter, have gone over and beyond to try and make accusations at him. Honestly, he's an entertainer. He has no place in politics, and he deserves some of the criticism he's received because he's an entertainer and no one takes him seriously because he hasn't been serious, or at least not presented himself seriously. Of course, this is his opportunity to prove us wrong, to take the interview, to present his views, to make himself clear, to give us a reason to take him seriously, like we saw with Arnold Schwarzenegger, like we saw with Ronald Reagan, like we have seen with Don Cheadle, to seriously talk about the issues and show their expertise, their knowledge, their commitment, to give us a reason to take them seriously, to believe in them. Even Clint Eastwood, another example. What does Kanye do? Kanye said, well, define who do you mean by they? What does he want Tim to say?
Press. I'm not using I don't use the word as the way I guess you guys use. I'm talking about.
It is them though, isn't it? I mean, because
this is something that's coming from Kanye. This is something that's coming from Nick Fuentes. They and them. And for those who are not familiar with English, where English isn't your first language, the connotation that they're using of they and them seems to be targeting a religious group of people. It seems to be something that is anti-Semitic or is racist in its language. And I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong. I think that's upsetting. And I think it's unfair. It's inaccurate. Let's go on.
and because when you think about it, consider it. In 2018.
What do you mean it's not?
What do I mean? Like, okay, so how about, are you leaving?
Are you afraid of the press?
He's gone.
Okay. So that's exactly where we saw it end. And I think Tim Pool did a great job there. Not because he was trying to confront Kanye West or Nick Fuentes or Milo Yiannopoulos, not because he was trying to get them into a gotcha situation. No, it was because he allowed them to speak and to present the case they wanted to present. This was what Kanye wanted to do. He wanted to go on and to present his case, to make his case. And he brought along the same people he brought along to Trump at the dinner. Now, people say, well, Tim shouldn't have done it, that it should have been shut down, that he should have denounced them. And I will tell you that is wrong. The very best thing that Tim could have done was allowed this conversation to happen, to allow people to see what Kanye had to say and what he believed in his own words, so that we, especially as voters, as someone that he wants to appeal to as a politician, to see exactly where he stands. I think it's absolutely important not to shut down his voice, but to hear his voice and thus for the public to make their decision. Do you trust Kanye as a politician? Do you believe his ideology? Do you support what he stands for? That's the same thing I would say about Louis Farrakhan. It's the same thing I say about Barack Obama. I say that about Joe Biden. I say that about BLM, Antifa, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, the Democratic Socialists of America. Hear what they actually are saying when they are saying it, and then evaluate that. I've dealt with a lot of people on the far left. I've also met many people on the far right. And I make my conclusions based on what are they actually saying. I was told for years that people in the Tea Party are racist and evil and bad people. And I actually said to many people, have you ever been to a Tea Party meeting? Have you ever talked to people who say they are in part of the Tea Party? I've asked people, they say, well, everyone who goes to meet President Trump, they're just evil, racist people. I'm like, have you ever been to a speech by President Trump? Have you ever talked to the people who go to those events? Because I have, several times. And the answer is, when you actually speak to these individuals, they're not the demons that you're making them out to be. That's not the reality of the conversation that actually occurs. You know, the Tea Party never had riots. They didn't burn down buildings. They didn't destroy property. They didn't leave areas that they were having protests or speeches at dirtier than when they arrived. In fact, the exact opposite is true. People who go to see President Trump are a wide range of individuals of every race and religion, sex and sexuality and sexual preference that you could possibly imagine. I know this because I've actually been at these events. So the best thing you can do is actually confront people and say, here's the actual event. I've been at many events with BLM and Antifa, progressive leaders of tomorrow, and I've actually shown people what they had to say as they were making racist statements sometimes, sexist statements sometimes, objectionable statements at times. And I've actually shown that in live streams so people can see the actual comments that they are making. What is the reality of their political points of view? Now, obviously, the far left hate me for that, for actually showing them that. But I'm doing nothing different than when I go and I cover Larry Sharpe having a speech, when I've gone out and I've covered Andrew Cuomo when he was out speaking, when I've covered various candidates on the campaign trail. I'm showing the public what's being said so that you can evaluate it rather than listening to someone label them, or worse yet, to try and silence them. That's the worst thing you could possibly do, because it doesn't actually protect you. See, we often hear, well, we have to protect people because we have to silence those guys. No, you don't. You're not protecting anyone. You're not making it better. In fact, I would say it's probably the opposite. You're making it worse. When I looked at this, and I had a lot of feelings about it, and I'm trying to separate those feelings from the fact. What did Tim Pool do? He gave individuals who are being attacked in the news media, rightly or wrongly, they're being attacked in the media, and these individuals have very questionable histories and statements behind them. And he gave them an opportunity to give their point of view, to clarify their positions and what they believe. And for Kanye, as someone who wants to enter the political realm, gave him the opportunity to show his credibility as a candidate and what he can offer the public as an elected official. Elected officials don't get up and walk out of conversations, of interviews, without substantial cause, without some absolute reason. They don't present a half of an idea of their ideology, of their political focus, and then leave it hanging. They don't walk away from tough questions just because it's a tough question that they don't want to answer. No, that's not what politicians do. That's not what someone who's credible in politics does. You take the questions, unless it's a gotcha, and it's obviously a gotcha, and you tell someone that you are playing a gotcha, you're trying to set me up. You make it clear to the public why it was a gotcha, why you were set up. Kanye wasn't set up. This was Kanye's conversation. He walked into it. He presented it. He was given an opportunity to give clarification. He walked away. He wasn't forced. He wasn't treated badly. Nick Fuentes was starting into a conversation, which again was walking down a path that people have correctly identified about him and his ideology, which is very repugnant, very repulsive. I don't blame Tim Pool for that. In fact, I applaud Tim Pool for making it obvious for the public by presenting that. Now, personally, would I give Nick Fuentes the time of day? No. There's no reason to. He isn't running for an elected office, thank God. And he doesn't deserve any greater influence or any greater reach to the public. But he has been implicated in someone who is running for elected office, who has a record, who has been effective in the past, and therefore we need to understand that. But I think this is a tool. We should take this very much for what it has been, enlightening to the public. It has provided us the answers to questions that we need answered. Tim Pool did a service to the public. Kanye is not credible. He's an entertainer. And whether you like him as an entertainer or not, many people find him to be a very good entertainer. Fantastic. I'm glad that it's entertaining for you. I'm glad that you enjoy his music. Wonderful. And many people find him to be interesting to follow because of his life, the complications of his life. He's kind of like the housewives of wherever. It's watching human tragedy on film, a train wreck in action. Okay, fantastic. That's on you. I don't care. But he's not a credible politician. He's not credible as someone seeking elected office. That's what I took out of that. Nick Fuentes gave no reason to believe anything other than what we have already known about him as a individual who has ideologies that are repugnant. And Milo seems to be the person in the background, somewhat of a Svengali pulling some strings. He seems to be someone who's just taking advantage of the entire scenario. And I'm sure he is enriching himself through that. And perhaps, like some people have said, that Milo doesn't like President Trump, and so he's engineered this as a means to attack President Trump, to weaken President Trump, because he doesn't like President Trump. That may be correct, but I think this was important. And going back to what we saw about Hassan, what we have seen from the far left, let me say it again. They're wrong. This has nothing to do with Tim Pool. The actions and reactions of Kanye West, of Nick Fuentes, of Milo Yiannopoulos have nothing to do with Tim Pool. They're their own individuals. Tim Pool was having a conversation that the public would be informed and educated by. He did the right thing. The wrong thing is what Hassan would say, which is to keep that quiet and hide that. Because one day it's Nick Fuentes or Kanye West, the next day it's going to be Hassan. That he will be silenced because someone finds it to be objectionable, because someone's going to say, you said something in your past that we don't agree with, and you should never speak again. I don't agree with that. Now it comes down to you. You can see Tim Pool's IRL, see the entire conversation in full context. I think those are the two things that are important about it. I think they reveal a lot. I think it proves to us that, I think it gives us proof again that President Trump did nothing wrong. That President Trump had nothing to do with this, but that it is being used against him unfairly. President Trump has his own issues. He's got his own problems, whether you like him or dislike him, and he has to address that for himself. This incident with Kanye, with Nick Fuentes, well, that has nothing to do with President Trump. Maybe you took something different out of that meeting and that conversation. But I think it's important for people to see what was real and what happened. And silencing Tim Pool or anyone else in the news media, anyone else in politics, political commentary, silencing them would not have done a service to the public. It would have been a disservice. It would have hurt us. It is better to have the light of day than the shade of night. That's how I feel about it. So that's my reaction to what happened with Tim Pool, Kanye West. Do you think that Tim Pool was the bad guy? Was he the bad guy in the conversation because of what he said to Kanye West? Was he the bad guy because he had those voices on his program and he gave them the opportunity to explain themselves or to share themselves with the public? Do you think Hassan and the far left are correct in that any voice that you don't like should instantly be silenced? And if you do believe that, what happens when someone says you have to be silenced because someone else found it to be offensive or objectionable? This is a free speech issue. And anyone who's saying otherwise, I think, has a political goal and they have an objective that isn't in your best interest. But I could be wrong. Tell me what you think. I thank you for taking some time out of your day to speak with me. I look forward to seeing you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know you've heard it before. What difference does it? You make the difference. When you watch, chat, tweets, your likes and shares and your subscription, you make the difference. From across the world, you help us to keep the lights on and the stream alive. You are making the difference to fight the woke and the crazy legislation that we see before. We at No Soundbites Allowed And I want to thank you for everything that you do in helping us reach our goal, and your likes, your tweets, your comments, and your subscriptions to the channel. We want to thank you from the bottom of our heart. And this is a special thank you to those who have donated to the channel and helped us in all of our efforts. We will strive to make this channel the best that we possibly can, because you deserve no less. Thank you.